On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1974. We're going to be having a listen to Barry White, and he's going to be singing My First, My Last, My Everything. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, I am a bit surprised that it's taken this long to get to Barry White, one of those voices that is so unique and instantly recognisable. We're going to be having a listen to, one of his classic hits, of which there were many, but certainly over here in the UK, I think everybody knows My First, My Last, My Everything. We will be jumping into it, as always, with the pitch monitoring software. I have isolated the vocal, and if you want to watch this the whole way through without me interrupting it, there's a link in the description below, as always, so you can click on that. But let's jump into it and see how Barry gets on.
We got it together, didn't we? We've definitely got our thing together, don't we, baby? Isn't that nice? I mean, really, when you really sit and think about it, isn't it really, really nice? I can easily feel myself slipping more and more away into that super world of my own. Nobody but you and me. We've got it together, baby. My first, my last, my everything, and the answer to all my dreams. You're my sun, my moon, my guiding star, my kind of wonderful. That's what you are. I know there's only one like you. There's no way they could have made two. You're all I'm living for. Your love I'll keep forevermore. You're the first, you're the last, my everything.
I'm just going to jump in here because there's so much going on. In the intro, it's great because we've obviously just got Barry talking, but the way that we have the strings that starts up and then we get some more strings that come in that are harmonizing with the previous strings. So we're gradually building throughout that intro, even though it's just Barry talking. And then, we get the drums coming in, and in the intro as well, we have this semitone run on the bass, which is going to be happening pretty much all the time. But I love the bass in this as well. Just listen to that undercurrent and the way that it's jumping around all over the place. And this is just something that you got, very much back in, the 50s and the 60s and the whole Motown thing. The production was, top notch. But, some of the bass lines going on were just so impressive. And, I've mentioned about great session players back in the day and the Cutting Crew, and just great musicians who had put in these lines and not even necessarily get a writing credit on the song. They were just putting in these melodic hooks that really built from the foundation up. So when you have that rhythm section of drums and bass, some of the lines on bass that were going off were just really melodic in themselves. So it just gives you a great starting point. But you could see here that Barry, when he starts talking, he's talking in and around, I'd say probably E2. I think there was maybe a G2 in there as well, and down to a D2. So in terms of the ranges, just where he's speaking, I will get the piano up on screen so you can see that the E2 is right at the bottom end of the bass range, which is to be expected, and he was going just, a couple of semitones lower than that, so down to this D2. So yeah, really low in his talking voice, but then the interesting thing is, as soon as he kicks in with his vocal, which we will just take it back to when he comes in, you can see that the first is an F3. So when we're looking at where the F3 is, we are here. So we're now pretty much in the middle of the baritone range and, middle of the bass range, if not kind of slightly over halfway. So we're not singing down at this lower end, but you can tell that when he's talking that he's got a really low voice. But we want to keep these notes in mind because it means that the E2, if we were talking about the F2, it's just a semitone higher. So it means that from his talking voice, we've gone up an octave. So if I'm holding this note, that's how far up he's taken his voice with the first note of the verse. So it's actually really impressive already. It's going to fly under your radar, and I guarantee you all of the notes that we're going to be looking at here are going to be somewhat surprising because of his voice and the tone of his voice and how deep it actually sounds. And when I say how deep it sounds, because yeah, the notes are going to be interesting, but we'll listen on just to the verse. I tell you what, let's listen to the isolated vocal to hear it in detail.
My first, my last, my everything.
Bang, and there we have a D4. So I said that he was talking on a D2. He's gone up not one octave, but he's gone up 2 octaves from his talking voice. Again, that is massively impressive. How many times do we do an analysis video where a vocalist has gone up an octave? And I always say that it's impressive to do that from a verse to a chorus. But here, from his talking voice, we've gone up an octave for the verse and 2 octaves. When we're looking at these notes, the D4, let's now have a bit of a reference to the range that we're talking about, because now he's at the top end of the baritone range and he's now gone, top end of the bass range. He's only got a couple more notes to go and then he's beyond that, and we're pushing into the tenor range. He's now just beyond halfway up the tenor range, which sounds crazy to say that Barry White is singing notes that you'll find in the tenor range, but he is, and this is all in his chest voice. He's definitely not going to be going up into a light head voice sound, because that's not something you get from Barry White's voice. But, let's listen on a little bit more.
And the answer to all my dreams.
And I'm just going to give you another reference point here. That's the note. Those are the notes that he's singing. But because of his tone and the body in there, it kind of sounds like, it kind of sounds like it's down there, but it's not, it's an octave higher. So, it's really strange to relate this. And I know that people hearing my voice going, and then hearing the notes, and then going back to Barry's voice.
And the answer to all my dreams.
That's the same notes, but it just sounds obviously so much richer, so much fuller from Barry's voice, and therefore deeper.
You're my sun, my moon,
and it's great because the pitch monitoring software has picked up the backing vocals, and we can see that the backing vocals are at a G sharp 4, and that they sound really high. But you would think that looking at the voices on screen, we know that this is Barry's voice here. You would think from the sound of it that they wouldn't even fit on the same page, because Barry's voice is obviously really low and it's female backing singers, so they must be singing really high. But it really does show how deceptive the voice can be just with the tone and the way that our ear interprets pitch. Because I've heard sometimes, even when people are out and listening to a particular singer and they're saying, oh yeah, he doesn't sing that high. But when you analyse it, and I know exactly how some singers, can hit high notes and they sound lower like this because of their tone. And the people think that they're going, and they think it's down there. No, you've got to take your voice up an octave. And for most guys to do that, they would struggle.
I got it started. My kind of wonderful.
Na 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 na. There we go. That was the F4 again. Just a couple of semitones off the backing singers.
That's what you are. I know there's only one like you.
And again, spanning an octave, this A3 that we had, it's just a couple of semitones away from that G3. And we were talking about the G4 previously and the F. So we've got this constant jump of an octave. And again, taking into consideration his talking voice is 2 octaves lower than this and a little bit more than that.
There's no way they could have made two. You're all I'm living for.
I just want to highlight his vibrato, which is something that we always tend to highlight, but it's really subtle, but it is in there most of the time. He does have the ability, and did have the ability, to sing, hold a note, apply vibrato, and just have little tail off lines as well, which we'll hear in this performance. But listen out for this wobble. I'll play it in slow motion so that you can listen in a bit more detail.
They could have made two.
Made two. You can hear those wobbles coming in again when I sing it. Sounds nothing like it. It does sound like I'm singing higher, but I'm not, I swear. Right, let's listen on.
You're all I'm living for. Your love I'll keep forevermore. You're the first. You're the last.
No. That was, again, your great vocal technique, those slides going up to an E4. So again, I've already mentioned the E4, the F4, and the backing singers were just here. So yeah, I mean, I hope that this is maybe a little bit of a revelation that people didn't realize how high Barry White actually sung. The notes just sound deep, and yeah, talking, obviously you're going to think, oh, he's got a deep voice, but just great range. When I talk about range, it's always from your lowest note to your highest note, and it doesn't matter which vocal classification you're in. Your range is just that. You might have a range of 1 octave, 2 octaves, 3 octaves plus, but your range is just how far you go from your bottom note to your top note. So when people say about somebody having an impressive range, generally, and I think mistakenly, they listen to high notes. They go, oh, he's got a great range. But sometimes, a guy can hit an A4, a B4, a C5, a D5, even an E5, and they don't really go very low. It's just that they've got maybe a 2 octave range, but their range goes from that E5 down to E4 down to E3. So then below that E3, they might struggle to get any notes, but that's just their range. So you wouldn't say that they've got a massive, range and they've got loads of notes at their disposal. But some people, when they hit a high note, they say, oh, he's got such an amazing range. But range is literally what it sounds like. I'm tempted just to listen to the isolated vocal for a little bit more.
In you, I found so many things. A love so new, only you could bring. Can't you see it's you?
And again, backing vocals just got picked up here at the G4. That's exactly what I said earlier. We've got exactly the same notes pretty much getting hit here from Barry and the backing vocalists.
You make me feel this way.
And it's great that we get a visual representation of range, so you can see that Barry's voice is here and the backing singers are here, because sometimes some people will argue that, oh no, it's definitely the octave below this, but you just can't hear it clearly enough, or you haven't got a sensitive enough ear. But this is the point about the analysis videos. When we look at it objectively, as we do with every single singer, we've got the proof on screen that we can see the backing singers are here and Barry's voice is just here, really close. So this is the point. I mean, they're both singing in the same octave here. So when we're looking at the ranges, when I said about that, G4 up here, because we're just in and around this range, you'd say, oh, well, these singers, if they were guys, you'd say, well, they're up at the top end of the male tenor range. And this is what Barry's doing. This isn't a light head voice sound. He's singing this in chest voice, so he's getting notes, towards the top end of the male tenor range, but he's hitting them properly. He is using his chest voice.
You're like a fresh morning dew on a brand new day. I see so many ways that I can love you till.
And he's all over these notes, that F4.
You're my reality, yet I'm lost in a dream. You're the first, the last, my everything.
I mean, it's such an expressive voice. I bring the instrumentation back in and jump into it. And when I say about instrumentation, we've got this great string ensemble going on, but just a quick word on the backing vocals. Look how accurate they were. And I know that we've got a collection of voices. So when you add one voice to another voice that's really accurate, the overall sound of that, the mean average of that pitch is going to sound more accurate. It's why, you can have a crowd of 30,000, people that can't necessarily sing that well, but they all hit a basic melody so that the melody comes across, because you get the average of all of the voices. So all of those that are totally missing the notes, you don't really hear those. You start to hear everybody locking into that same pitch. But anyway, I mean, this is just absolutely spot on. Of course, we're not looking at anything that's been pitch corrected or auto-tuned, but I mean, this is, again, starting bang on the C5, and then we go a little bit sharp. We've got the vibrato, we're sharp here, but then we start off with that next note, just absolutely bang on. But yeah, let's get back into it.
I know there's only one like you.
Interestingly, I mean, that was... Oh, I'm just going to take it back.
Only one like you.
It sounds like we almost got a bit of clipping on the mic, which is when... you're really going for it, and especially with a voice like Barry's, being in that recording studio, and he's hit a note with so much volume that it's kind of pushed the limit of the microphone.
Only one like you.
I mean, it kind of blends into his voice because he's got such a raspy body in his sound that almost vocal distortion. I mean, that's what's happening to the audio in the studio. The vocals being distorted, the audio's being distorted because it's too loud, but his voice sounds like that anyway, so it was just a tiny hint of it there.
There's no way they could have made two. Girl, you're my reality, but I'm lost in a dream. You're the first, you're the last, my everything.
There we have it. I mean, we do have a little bit of talking at the end as well, that we kind of could play through, again, to get an appreciation of his talking voice.
You and me, baby. Just you and me.
But again, I mean, I was smiling before the last note because obviously I know what's coming up. But that na 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 na, that's the note that Barry's hitting at the end. Let's have a listen again.
You're the first, you're the last, my everything.
My everything. So it's actually up there, but of course sounds totally different from Barry's vocal cords. And let's have another listen just so you can take in that this is the backing vocal, the female, I should point out, the female backing vocal, and this is Barry's voice here. So again, just a couple of semitones difference, but listen to the difference in the sound of the note, because this is so close, because going na, na, yeah, that's the difference. Na. There's hardly any difference between those notes, as you can tell, because I'm just kind of singing through them one by one. They're only separated by 2 semitones, but listen to the difference that the tone and the body makes.
My dream, you're the first, you're the last, my everything.
So there we go. So I mean, it's really interesting to dive into this one because it's a song that I know so well, and one of those songs that's on the radio all the time as well. It's a timeless classic, but I really didn't have an appreciation before making this video of how high these notes were, to the point where most guys, this is where they would start to struggle, to even hit these notes. And I guarantee you that most guys aren't talking down at D2 and E2. And as you can hear, when I'm hitting that, when I'm hitting that high note, I'm using a light head voice sound. If I was going, and trying to put more body into it, then I can do, but it's still not going to sound anywhere close to the body that, Barry had in his voice. And that's why it was not only impressive from a tonal perspective and that consistency throughout his range, but when you look at it like this in detail, it's just hugely impressive from a range perspective. And I mean, it just adds a layer of appreciation to the great artists, and especially a vocalist like Barry. This is what always tends to happen. When you look at things in even more detail, you can appreciate them even more. And this is certainly one of those cases. But anyway, thank you guys for requesting and suggesting this particular song for me to check out. As always, keep those coming in the comment section below for future videos. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!